Marge Ptaszek was searching for the purpose of her life and the truth that would tie everything together to make sense of what was taught and what was happening on our planet, the fire that was creating all the smoke. Through many experiences, she was finally led to the knowledge book that provided all the answers. She is now talking about this gift to humanity on Knowledge Book Radio, so all can be united in peace, love, and harmony. Please call 1-973-787-7035 or email mmjp99@gmail.com with questions. If you send your postal address to mmjp99@gmail.com, you will receive 3 chapters of the Knowledge Book as a gift. Now, here is your host, Marge Ptaszek.
Hello, everyone. I'm Marge Ptaszek, and you are listening to the Knowledge Book Radio with Marge Ptaszek on Transformation Talk Radio. For the next hour, as we've been doing for a while, we will continue our series of Omega Talks. And these are given once a month at the end of the month on the 4th Tuesday of the month, 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. East Coast time. Okay. Now, these Omega Talks are part of the unification program of the Call to Friendship Association. And this association is mentioned in the Knowledge Book at least 2 or 3 times. And in these talks, we take some form of world knowledge, some world topic, which is based on any idea we may have, and basically connect it to the Omega dimension, which is the 19th dimension. Now, the 19th dimension has been inaccessible to the world human up until this time, and this is the first time the 19th dimension is open to humanity through the Knowledge Book. So that energy is contained in the Knowledge Book. Okay. And the topic for this month, since we are in the holiday and the giving season, we thought that service to humanity would be a good topic to look at during this time of giving and receiving. So, service to humanity. If you want to define love, then it is willing self-sacrifice for the good of another that does not have reciprocation or that the person being loved is deserving. So in the Knowledge Book, in the glossary, the definition of self-sacrifice is devotion without expecting anything in return. So you give something of yourself, whether it's time, whether it's energy, whether it's some kind of monetary value or some kind of service, but in the end, you expect nothing for that. So this is not a bartering topic. This is not something I give this to you. You have to give something to me of equal or greater value. This is a pure gift from the essence. And you're expecting nothing in return for that. Okay, so if we continue further into the definitions, then according to Ralph Waldo Emerson, self-sacrifice is the real miracle out of which all the reported miracles grow. According to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, self-sacrifice is the sacrifice of oneself or one's interest for others or for a cause or ideal. Now, we also need to figure out what does the word devotion means that the Knowledge Book mentions in the glossary. Because in the glossary it said, self-sacrifice is devotion without expecting anything in return. And devotion, according to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, is the act of dedicating something to a cause, an enterprise, or activity, or the fact or state of being ardently dedicated to and loyal to a person or a cause. So In essence, self-sacrifice, according to the knowledge book, is us giving of ourselves, us performing a service, us giving something like knowledge, like friendship, like tolerance, like acceptance to others, despite the fact that the other may not be exactly our best friend, or in fact could be our enemy. And the knowledge book also gives us a definition of mission, and that is duty or task. And the mission dimension is the duty undertaken by a person according to his or her evolutionary consciousness. Now, it may be a surprise to some. It may be, of course, an obvious statement to others, but all of us here on this planet, whether it's a plant, whether it's an animal, whether it's inanimate matter, whether it's a human, we are all here with a particular task to accomplish. We are here at this time because we had made a promise that we volunteered to be here to actually accomplish what we were supposed to be accomplishing. So each one of us has a separate duty, each one of us has a separate task, and all of us are basically on an evolutionary journey, evolutionary path to us to become genuine humans. So again, all of us are missionaries, whether we realize it or not. Some of us maybe could have remembered some of our promise and are keeping that promise by being in service to humanity. Some of us still need to wake up. And that's why we give the first, the 20th, and the 25th fascicle of the knowledge book to people so that they can start their journey of awakening and going and completing their mission. And of course, those fascicles are free of charge. They contain no strings attached. No one will be calling on you or ringing your doorbell asking you why you didn't read anything. So basically, it's our gift to you. If you want to read it, you read it. If not, you put it away until the time that it calls to you and you want to read it. Now, there is something that I say to myself, because I've heard this from some psychologists, that if you are depressed, do something. However, I add to that, if you want to be happy, do something for someone else. And we'll find that usually doing something for someone else makes us happy and happier, because happiness in giving is more than happiness in having. You could have a whole bunch of everything. You could be rich. You could have the golden touch. However, you could still be miserable because the material belongings don't really give you happiness. Then what are the results of mission and mission consciousness? In fascicle 39, the knowledge book states, quote, mission brings cognizance, brings responsibility, brings altruism to the human. If a human does not possess these virtues, he is not a missionary, even if he considers himself or herself a missionary. In mission consciousness, respect of a human to a human should come before her love, end quote. So now we're going to go into some examples of individuals who actually provided service for humanity, both famous and well-known figures like Mother Teresa, or people that we don't know anything about who did their own part to begin to give something of themselves to others. So when we hear of self-sacrifice, we think of the great people who made it their life mission to help others without any expectations for themselves. One of these, of course, is Saint Teresa or Mother Teresa of Calcutta. So she proves without a doubt that you don't need to be a billionaire to be one of the greatest humanitarians of all time. She became a nun and was granted permission to provide food for the needy. She founded the Missionaries of Charity, and this began in India. And later, this organization now has branches in 139 countries. She received a Nobel Peace Prize. And of course, her philosophy of actively helping the poor in every way is by far her greatest humanitarian contribution. So she's not rich. She was very poor. However, if you look at her, any of the pictures that she is, that displays her face or shows her in films, basically her face is radiant with happiness. Another person is, of course, we all know Mahatma Gandhi. He is the one who inspired Indians to independence through a path of nonviolence. Now, we all know, or we may know, that the Machiavellian saying is, the end justifies the means. Doesn't matter how you get there, as long as you reach the goal. You could lie, you can cheat, you could steal, you could do all kinds of bad stuff. However, as long as you reach the goal, you're fine. So if you are in a race and you trip another runner and you win, that was fine, because the goal was winning the race, and this is what you did. The fact that you use really nasty methods to get there doesn't matter according to Machiavelli. However, according to Gandhi, the road to the goal is as important as the goal itself. So for Gandhi, this race that was won by this individual was not a good race. The person will not be respected because he injured another person, injured another runner in order to win. So he proved that, again, that he don't have to be rich and have a lot of money to make a difference. He is best known for using nonviolent practices to end the British occupation of India. What began as a stay in South Africa to earn his right as a British citizen grew into a movement that would capture the world's attention, and he is another person who has received the Nobel Peace Prize for his actions and activities. And in the United States, of course, we know that Martin Luther King Jr. was also very influential and followed the path of a nonviolent protest. He's best known for his practice of nonviolence, to protest injustice. He was a pastor of a church in Alabama, and he was one of the first to defend Rosa Parks. Now, some of you may know, some of you may not know, but Rosa Parks was a woman who refused to go back to the back of the bus where the what was called the colored section, where she was allowed to sit. She refused to move back, and and Martin Luther King actually supported her, and he had a role in the American Civil Rights Movement that actually grew later and would give the I Have a Dream speech that actually has inspired so many other humanitarians. And also, like Gandhi, Dr. King received the Nobel Peace Prize. So again, giving, serving was being recognized now 3 times to 3 separate individuals, all pretty well famous and pretty well known. Another individual is Nelson Mandela. He was a South African activist and former president. He lived from 1918 to 2013. He helped to bring the end to apartheid and has been a global advocate for human rights. He was in prison for 27 years and was finally released in 1990. He then became, 4 years later, the president in 1994. Now, he emphasized reconciliation between the country's racial groups and created the Truth and Reconciliation Commission to basically research and look into past human rights abuses. He also introduced measures to encourage land reform, combat poverty, and expand healthcare services. He declined a second term, and he became a second term as a president, and then he became an elder statesman and focused on combating poverty and HIV/AIDS through the charitable Nelson Mandela Foundation. Now, Vicente Ferrer Mancho was a Jesuit missionary who spent his life working to improve the lives of the poor in the mission he founded in southern India. Today, this foundation, the Vicente Ferrer Foundation, carries out humanitarian project in Andhra Pradesh, bringing aid to over 2.5 million to people. So again, wide effects. And he was performing his mission as he understood it. Yuval Roth is an Israeli carpenter and professional juggler. And he knows loss and tragedy personally. But instead of wallowing in his bitterness and self-pity, he joined a forum dedicated to ending the divide between the Israelis and Palestinians. Now, as he became more and more acquainted with the Palestinian families, he finally realized, and it dawned on him, that Palestine had very high hospital costs, and they also had very stringent restrictions on travel to Israel in order to get health aid or health treatment. So this way, it was incredibly difficult for many Palestinians to get proper medical care. He then responded by establishing Derek Haklama on the road to recovery. This is an organization staffed by 200 volunteers, and he coordinated single-handedly in transporting ailing Palestinians into Israel so they could receive proper care. In 2010 alone, his group traveled an estimated 90,000 kilometers, 55,000 miles to save Palestinian lives. So again, someone who had a really rough life did not let that stop him. In fact, that motivated him to help those who were having a hard time. Now in Fascicle 39, this is emphasized with the following, quote, "The power of having been oppressed brings perfection, love, patience, tolerance to those who have gained humane attributes. But to those who have not gained those virtues, it brings violence and cruelty." Once again, quote, "The power of having been oppressed brings perfection, love, patience, tolerance to those who have gained humane attributes, but to those who have not gained those virtues, it brings violence and cruelty." So we all go through the school of hard knocks. We all have hardships in our lives. We all have some form of tragedy, some sort of sadness in our lives. However, if we have attained some understanding that this suffering is also held in the hearts of many others, that this becomes then a connection with those individuals. It becomes a bridge of communication. However, if you're still stuck in anger, if you're still stuck in the pain that you had suffered and do not rise above it, then basically you're condemned to bring that suffering to others and to be cruel to others. Then we have another person, Desmond Tutu. Again, he's a South African social rights activist and a retired Anglican bishop, and he served as the first Black Archbishop of Cape Town. He, of course, was a leading spokesperson for the rights of Black South Africans, and he helped draw international attention to the sorry state of apartheid in South Africa. He was born into a very poor family in the Transvaal, and he grew up watching people of color being discriminated against through no fault of their own. And even though he was young, it did not take him long to realize that it was wrong to mistreat someone just because of the color of their skin. Now, as a teenager, he actually wanted to be a doctor, but because he didn't have the money, he couldn't pursue the medical studies. Instead, he became a teacher who encouraged his students to become the best they could be. And while he was teaching, he also studied theology and was eventually ordained as a priest. Now, he was frustrated, as many others have been, with the South African policy of apartheid, and he became an active member or an active force in the anti-apartheid movement and emerged as an outspoken advocate of Black rights. He garnered international fame for his works and was honored with the 1984 Nobel Peace Prize. Maybe a lesser known person is Harriet Tubman. She was an abolitionist prior to the American Civil War. She escaped her own slavery to lead hundreds of slaves to freedom as a conductor through the Underground Railroad. Now she became, and still she was and remained humble despite her accomplishments, stating that she wished she could have saved more slaves. She died in 1913. Okay, now if you could notice here, the Underground Railroad was a method by which slaves could go through. And one of the things that the slaves were using was as a signaling device were quilts. If people are familiar with the log cabin quilt, the log cabin block has a center square that possibly could be a red color, or it could be a yellow color, or it could be a black color. So depending on what kind of quilt was hung out, that told the slaves whether it was safe or not safe to proceed further. And of course, there was a movie made about Oskar Schindler. He was a German industrialist and a member of the Nazi Party. However, he is credited with saving the lives of 1,200 Jews during the Holocaust because he employed them in his factory that produced enamelware and ammunitions. And this was done in Poland. He was very bright. He found ways around things. He found ways around blockages. He had an extraordinary initiative. He had tenacity. He had courage. And he had the dedication to save the lives of his Jewish employees. Now he had, as a member of the Nazi Party, he had connections. So his connections helped him to protect his Jewish workers from deportation and from death. As time went on, Schindler had to give Nazi officials even larger bribes and gifts of luxury items that he could only get from black market to keep his workers safe. Now he continued this bribery scheme of the SS officials until the end of the World War II in Europe in May 1945. By the time they got to the end of the war, it's a good thing that war ended because basically he had spent his entire fortune on bribes and black market purchases of supplies for his workers. Now there's another person is Bay Gaddy, maybe not as well known as some of the previous people we've looked at. She actually went back and forth between low-paying jobs and homelessness. She dug through trash for nuggets of sustenance when she couldn't afford to buy the food. Then one day in 1981, her luck changed. She purchased a 50-cent lottery ticket and won $290. Now, instead of spending this money on herself, as everyone would actually do, well, I have this money now, I could eat now, well, I could maybe get myself ready for another job, or maybe I could reinvest it or rebuy some more lottery tickets, maybe get some more money. She didn't. Since she knew what it was to be hungry and unemployed, she used her lottery winnings to feed 39 hungry people in Baltimore on Thanksgiving. And from that point forward, she helped many civic-minded volunteers and would continue to feed Baltimore's poor on Thanksgiving. And that became known as Thanks for Giving Feast. By the time of her 10 years after the first Thanksgiving event, or by 1991, she helped to prepare 17,000 meals. And all of these meals were funded through the generosity of donations. So the generous donations actually helped her to feed these individuals. She was later called Baltimore's Mother Teresa, and she kept feeding the poor on Thanksgiving up until she died in 2001. Now, the fact that this woman is alive is actually a miracle, because in 2012, she was shot in the head, but she managed to survive. She used to work, or Malala Yousafzai spent her early youth advocating for children's and women's rights and to education in Pakistan. She became the voice of Pakistani women's access to education, and in 2014, at age 17, she became the youngest recipient to win the Nobel Peace Prize. She co-founded the Malala Fund, which is a nonprofit organization with She's Shahid, and this is based in Birmingham, the UK. So it doesn't matter how young you are, how old you are, how rich you are, how poor you are, you still have the capacity, you still have the ability to help others in whatever way that you can. Now we'll talk about Pope John Paul II. He was a Pope of the Roman Catholic Church from 1978 to 2005. He is instrumental in helping to end the communist rule in Europe. His goal that he accomplished was to improve the Catholic Church's relations with Judaism, with Islam, and the East Orthodox Church, and the Anglican community. And he took steps in this way to unify the religions of the world. He was one of the famous peacemakers in the history of the world and the second longest serving Pope in modern times. Now, he is mentioned in the Knowledge Book as some people saw him as having a propaganda for his own popularity. However, the Knowledge Book points out that his intentions were misunderstood because he actually wanted to unite humanity in peace and brotherhood. And this was one of the beginning times when the religions were seen to be able to be united, that people in different religions could be united, and the unification of humanity on the planet could be started and could be accomplished. Another pope in this list of individuals who have served humanity is Pope John the 23rd, who was born as Angelo Giuseppe Roncalli back in November the 25th in 1881, and who died on the 3rd of June, 1963. When John the 23rd was selected to the papacy at age 77, so now this is a pretty old gentleman to come into this service. Now, very few people expected this outsider would actually leave a mark on the Catholic Church. Although he was in power or was reigning in the Catholic Church very briefly, just under 5 years. However, in that time, he transformed the institutional church. His most enduring achievement was the calling for and convening of the Second Vatican Council, also known as Vatican II. And this conference, which stretched over several years, resulted in the Catholic Church's updating of many of its teachings and taking a more conciliatory stance towards the modern world. He also wrote many influential encyclicals or public proclamations, and in 1963 titled Pacem in Terris, in which he advocated for world peace. So peace on earth is the translation for the Latin. So again, we have an individual, this time again, a very old individual who didn't have that much time to serve. However, he used that time very efficiently and effectively and transformed the Catholic Church into a more modern institution, a more open institution, again, setting the stage for unification of humanity. Bertrand Russell was born in 1872 and died in 1970. Now, he was a British pacifist who campaigned against conscription, in other words, being forced to serve in the military. He actually went to jail for 6 months for speaking against America's entry into the First World War in 1917. He did support the war against Nazi Germany, but after World War II, he joined the campaign for nuclear disarmament. He became very popular and very noted intellectual celebrity, often appearing on BBC programs. And in the 1960s, he became active in opposing the Vietnam War and was highly critical of American involvement in South Vietnam. Now, for those who are interested in following up more of what he did, there are many YouTube videos about his life, and there are many YouTube videos actually with him discussing his position or being interviewed by others. He also wanted to have unilateral disarmament. If no one has a weapon, then we have a very good chance of no one being hurt by that weapon. Now, one of his final statements was criticizing Israel's aggression into the Middle East, calling for Israel's withdrawal from the occupied territories of Palestine. Earl Bertrand Arthur William Russell won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1950, quote, in recognition for his varied and significant writings in which he champions humanitarian ideals and freedom of thought. In fascicle 33, the Knowledge Book mentions Bertrand Russell by saying this, quote, he worked all his life to establish permanent peace in the world. The Bertrand Russell Foundation he established with this purpose brings together from time to time peace lovers from all over the world. Now, Bertrand Russell did not believe in God. He was an atheist. He was a firm believer in the fact that logic and intellect can lead us to good results. That if we depend on logic, not some outside force, but by logic and our intellect, that we can make good decisions and be able to continue our work and continue our mission. So he was one of the first to come in to basically say, maybe religion is not the place to look for answers for everything, or not the religion as it was at that time, but basically to rely on ourselves and not others. So in the religious dimension, basically we rely on someone else to translate for us what the Bible says, what the Quran says, what the Torah says. We have others who are basically guiding us and teaching us. He was the first one to come in, basically to say logic, our own intellect, is a way to go to make, for us to be able to make our own decisions and follow the path that we need to take. And actually this also leads to what the Knowledge Book tells us, is that up until the 72nd dimension, we need a teacher, we need a guru, we need someone from the outside to teach us what to do and to tell us what to do. However, once we step into the Knowledge Book, once we step into the higher dimensions, we become our own teachers and our own gurus. So he was basically a harbinger of that kind of thinking and that kind of approach. We of course know of Dalai Lama, or most of us will know about Dalai Lama. Now he was teaching people to be wise selfish. Now he gave a lecture on Tuesday, the 8th of October in 2013, where he states that human beings may naturally be selfish, but they are also naturally compassionate. and this is proved by science. Helping someone else does not make a person feel good, but that is a wise kind of selfish, the Dalai Lama says. By nature, every human being loves oneself, the Dalai Lama said. But by helping another, you are building your own happy future. We should be wise selfish rather than foolish selfish. Now, the Dalai Lama himself attributes his earliest lessons about love and compassion to his mother. So the 14th Dalai Lama, or his name is Tenzin Gyatso, he received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1989 for advocating peaceful solutions based upon tolerance and mutual respect in order to preserve the historical culture and cultural heritage of his people. He was also instrumental in bridging the gap between religion and science by organizing and participating in discussions with neurologists and scientists to measure the physical effects of meditation. The Dalai Lama also promulgates the idea that all religions teach us the same thing, echoing the ideas presented in the knowledge book. Now, personally, the first time I heard someone say that all religions are the same was the Dalai Lama. My first reaction was, what's he talking about? That can't be the case. The Torah says one thing, the Bible says another, the New Testament says another, and the Quran says something else entirely. However, it was only after I heard those words, it was only after 9/11 where the Islam proponents or the followers of Islam started to talk about that the Quran talks about love, and that it talks about acceptance of humans and their social relationships, that I finally began to put the pieces together and said, yes, the religions are basically the same thing and they're teaching the same thing. And actually the knowledge book also reiterates the fact that God has been speaking to us through different forms over different times, because at each of those times, we were given exactly what we needed at that time for us to be able to develop and to evolve and to grow. In essence, if we had followed the precepts and had fully understood and encapsulated and merged with the previous book's teaching, then the next book's teaching would not have been necessary, because all we were given is the same knowledge, the same information, the same advice over and over again, but presented in slightly different fashion and slightly different form in order for us to be able to finally understand, merge, and accept and progress on our evolutionary journey. One of the greatest things in life is to extend a helping hand and perform an act of compassion that helps another human being or an animal. Whether it's offering love or time, whatever action is being taken, these waves of good deeds reach out far and wide, creating ripples of positive change. Now, Dr. Uday Modi brings free food to the elderly who have been abandoned by their own children. Her service that runs in Bhayandar, Mumbai, feeds close to 500 elderly people daily. Another person who selfless sacrifice. You don't have to be famous. You don't have to be impacting thousands of lives. However, Kirsten Miles, a 22-year-old resident of New Jersey, recently donated part of her liver to Talia, who was a toddler that she was babysitting. Now, Talia would not have been able to survive her condition without the transplant, and she generously offered to donate a part of her own organ to save Talia's life. Now, of course, everyone knows, or should know, or maybe does not know, that donating an organ poses a danger to the donor, because no one knows how the anesthesia would affect them. No one knows what the effect of the surgery would be, because basically a surgery is an unknown in many different ways. And so this was a self-sacrifice of their own body to give to this little girl to be able to grow and overcome her disease. Another example of selfless service by quote unquote common people, regular people. And this is Jadav Payeng, and he's known as the Forest Man of India. He spent 30 years of his life planting trees, and he created a real man-made forest of 550 hectares. That's over 2 square miles. And thanks to this reforestation, wildlife has returned to the area. And he did all this by himself. Now, the Molai forest that was created by Jadav Payeng is larger than Central Park in New York City. And thanks to him, this forest now houses Bengal tigers, Indian rhinoceros, reptiles, and over 100 deer, rabbits and monkeys, and several varieties of birds, including many vultures. So even if you're working alone, even if you're working by yourself, you can accomplish great deeds. Mar Jacob Murikan, who was an auxiliary bishop of the Pala diocese, donated a kidney to a 30-year-old man who didn't have enough means to receive transplant. The donation made Jacob the first serving bishop to offer an organ while alive. A lot of times the organ donors are received from individuals who have died in an accident. He said it was a, quote, simple sacrifice for fellow being. Only by allowing harvesting an organ from our body can we become a model to others, end quote. Now, of course, this is a time of Santa Claus. However, St. Nicholas was a Christian bishop who provided for the poor and sick and is the basis for the popular character of Santa Claus. So legend has it that after his death, this idea of gift giving grew, and eventually St. Nicholas transformed into Santa Claus, who brings Christmas presents to children around the world. He was born around 208 in around the year 280 in Patara, Lycia, and that's actually an area of land that is now part of present-day Turkey. He lost both of his parents as a young man. However, he used his inheritance to help the poor and the sick. He was a devout Christian and later served as a bishop of Myra, the city that is now called Demre. Now, there are some sources that say that he died on December 6, 343. And over the years, there have been stories that he performed miracles after his death, and the work for the poor spread to other parts of the world. He became known as a protector of children and sailors and was associated with gift giving. His memory created the gift-giving tradition of Christmas. Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. He was a Turkish field marshal, revolutionary statesman, author, and the founding father of the Republic of Turkey. He served as its first president from 1923 until his death in 1938. Now, he put in sweeping progressive reforms into place and modernized Turkey into a secular, industrializing nation. And because of his military and political accomplishments, he is seen as one of the most important political leaders of the 20th century. Now, Ataturk initiated a rigorous program of political, economic, and cultural reforms with the aim of building a modern, progressive, and secular nation state. He made primary education secular, free, and compulsory, and opened thousands of new schools where girls were also permitted to attend. This, plus the introduction of a Latin-based Turkish alphabet, allowed the country to achieve one of the highest literacy rates in the Middle East. Turkish women received the equal civil and political rights. Women were given voting rights in local elections in 1930, and in 1934 they were given full universal suffrage. Now, 100 years after his death in 1981, which was the centennial of Ataturk's birth, his memory was honored by the United Nations and UNESCO, which declared that year the Ataturk year in the world, and adopted the resolution on the Ataturk centennial, describing him as, quote, the leader of the first struggle given against colonialism and imperialism, quote, and a, quote, remarkable promoter of the sense of understanding between peoples and durable peace between the nations of the world, and that he would work all his life for the development of harmony and cooperation between peoples without distinction, end quote. Now, even though many Turkish political leaders claim to be the inheritors of Ataturk's mantle, but, quote, none has matched his breadth of vision, dedication, and selflessness. His motto was, peace at home, peace in the whole universe. So again, here we have a person who was the forerunner of the Turkey of today, who laid the groundwork for the creation of the Turkey where the knowledge book could come in and could be published and and distributed. And again, we're going on the secular side, not the religious side, but the secular side. He emphasized secular education, separation of church and state in the schools. He gave women the right to vote. He gave women the right to hold jobs. They did not have to wear the traditional garb. They could wear Western clothes. They don't have to cover their heads or their bodies with I forgot the name, sorry. But anyway, the women were able to hold jobs in equal status with the men. And fascicle 9 in the knowledge book, it states, quote, according to the theory of evolution, humans will perform mission in proportion with the efforts they make, quote. So as long as you make an effort, the more you make an effort, the greater the mission that you will accomplish. And depending on who you are and what your actual task has been in the world, and what your mission was to accomplish in the world, as long as you're making effort towards that end, then you're on the right path. Fascicle 9 states, quote, mission allotment is made here according to the degree of maturity of the brain fruit, and helping hands are extended. There are no privileges. The steps taken forward and the endeavors made will always prepare you for this happy medium. In fascicle 13, it states, quote, endeavors beyond distances are for the people of the world who are not after personal benefit. Our wishes are for your happiness, peace, and serenity, quote. And another line from fascicle 13, quote, in future, humankind will be more humanitarian, more conscious, more tolerant, quote, end quote. In fascicle 14, quote, in mediums where there is no sacrifice, happiness cannot find shelter. To expect rewards for your deeds will close the gates of happiness for you. I'll repeat that again. In mediums where there is no self-sacrifice, happiness cannot find shelter. To expect rewards for your deeds will close the gates of happiness for you. So again, giving something is not bartering. It is not buying something. It is not incurring favor for you from another individual. So our question is our mission genuine love? As we progress through life in a more selfless and self-sacrificing way, we come to genuine love. Now in fascicle 12 of the knowledge book, it says, quote, in genuine love, the marvelous vibrations that rise and flows from you, melting in all beauty, will cause you to transcend beyond your walls of thought and cognizance, end quote. So as we move from the self-centeredness in our infancy to altruism in adulthood, we take on the aspects of genuine love, expanding our consciousness and embracing love for all. In fascicle 48, quote, The single language of nature is love. The single language of the realms is evolution. The single language of Allah is the human. The language of love is a vibration. Natural love integrates with this vibration, but divine love is an evolutionary love. Afterwards comes conscious love, and this very love unifies with cognizance and embraces the whole. Quote, end quote. So again, language of love is a vibration. It is not a feeling, it is a vibration. And currently we do not have the technology to be able to measure this vibration. Natural love integrates with this vibration, but divine love is an evolutionary love. After that comes conscious love, and this very love unifies with cognizance and embraces the whole. So eventually we will be able to embrace everyone with love. We'll be able to serve everyone with whatever we have. Now, the knowledge book evolves us through the path of service to humanity. By going through the knowledge book programs, we gradually become more loving, more kind, more patient, more tolerant, and more altruistic, allowing us to escape the clutches of ego and to eventually embrace the totality. Now, although we are required to radiate our love to our surroundings, as stated in Ptaszek 28, we are also required to be in alignment with the time consciousness we are in. So the age of religions has ended. The age of knowledge has begun. Our service to humanity needs to be modulated, guided, and directed by intellect and logic, and in the direction of disseminating knowledge and the truth from a scientific aspect. When our intellect, logic, awareness triangle is closed by following the path designed, then we have the consciousness of what to do, and all our actions are beneficial and appropriate for any situation we find ourselves. So this comes to the end of our talk for this month. That's all we have time for. Again, Knowledge Book websites, www.usa.theknowledgebook.net for the United States website. The Turkish website is www.dkb-mevlana.org.tr. The Call to Friendship website is www.calltofriendship.org. Please contact me at 973-787-7035 or my email address mmjp99@gmail.com for any questions you may have. That's all for today. Love and be loved. Thank you.
You've been listening to Knowledge Book Radio with Marge Ptaszek. Marge was led to the Knowledge Book, a gift to humanity, at its time of transition to the Golden Age that provides the truth, energies, and knowledge. Now, she shares information from and answers questions about the Knowledge Book with you, the fourth Tuesday each month at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern on TransformationTalkRadio.com. For more information, visit usa.theknowledgebook.net and tune in next time for another amazing show on Knowledge Book Radio.